So good morning, everybody. Honor for me to be doing this. It's such a weird feeling, actually, because I was just in your seat 5 years ago, listening to other students come back to share their work experience. As Ms. Gray said, I'll be sharing my career path, what I did to get to where I'm at, and what I wish I would have known and done as a student. All right, a little bit about myself. I am from Fort Smith, Arkansas, born and raised, and I started Arkansas Tech in 2007. I wasn't really ready, or I was undeclared as a major, and my RA actually was the one that was in emergency management and suggested the classes. I took a few classes and fell in love with the program, fell in love with just how interesting, unique the degree is. I graduated when I was 21 in 2011, and personally, I wasn't ready for the adult world, so I stuck around. I was lucky enough to be accepted for a graduate assistantship, but I wasn't a GA teaching courses. I was working for a thing called the Center for Preparedness and Recovery. During my time there, the Arkansas governor actually required state organizations, court systems, the Arkansas Department of Education required school districts to have COOP plans, continuity of operations plans. So the former department head, he was this brainchild of the Center for Preparedness and Recovery.
That's Ed Leachman.
Yes. And basically, as this business, we as students went to the counties, went to the school districts, and we wrote continuity plans for them because they were mandated to have it. It was a win-win situation because these businesses, the counties, the schools, they got cheap student labor. And on our end, students got real-world experience. So it was a perfect learning opportunity, and it set me up for my career now. Some other things that I did while I was a student, I interned at my hometown county, Sebastian County, Department of Emergency Management, where I helped write the EOP. I did some grant writing for the Assistance to Firefighters grant. I got exposed to the Hazard Mitigation Plan. For a summer, I worked with the Red Cross on the disaster action team, and that's where all the fun is. That's when you get to respond. I went to a flood in Scott County, Arkansas. We opened up a shelter. I've done client casework for displaced families during fires. And when we weren't having these disasters, I was updating the hotel MOUs because, as you all know, when a family is displaced from a fire, the Red Cross actually gives them vouchers for hotels. And other groups I was a part of, I was part of CERT on campus, I'm the student organization, and Red Cross on campus. Fast forward to August 2013, after I graduated with my master's. I spent the summer applying for a lot of jobs, a lot of rejections, but I landed in Arlington, city of Arlington, in August 2013. And as the emergency management planner, I helped develop the EOP. As Ms. Gray said, I worked on the city COOP plan. That was my very first project for EMAP accreditation. So for EMAP, they had assessors come to see if they were compliant on all 64 standards of EMAP. And those standards range from everything in emergency management, from having developed plans, do you have a training program for those plans? Do you have mutual aid established? Do you have EOC exercises regularly? Do you have an evaluation and improvement plan? Do you have public education? Do you have outdoor warning systems? Everything you can think of in emergency management, EMAP accreditation ensures that you have that. And one of the things that they were deficient on was the COOP plan. So given my background with the Center for Preparedness and Recovery, I was a perfect fit. And if you all are familiar, another big EM program is the University of North Texas. That's right in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So a lot of people come up through that program and stay in the region to work. My supervisor, he liked outside blood. We thought a little different. We had a different education. So me being from out of the state and with my COOP plan, that was a major factor in me getting the job in Arlington. Other duties I had was that you are the on-call 24-hour duty officer. So if there was an emergency, you would be the one rushing to the EOC no matter what time of the day it is. I also managed the CERT program. As a city, we always depend on our volunteers, and luckily I had my experience being a CERT trained the trainer while being a student at Arkansas Tech. And a big part of my job was doing presentations to public groups like schools, Rotary clubs, boys clubs, neighborhood watch communities, faith-based organizations about public preparedness, about severe storms, what have you. So the reason I got this job, I told you, was my coop planning. I was from out of state, but it's the little experiences that I've added to my resume to get me to that position. So the coop planning, I was lucky enough to be a part of the Center for Preparedness and Recovery, but I also had a certification as a level 1 continuity practitioner. In Arlington, you were the CERT program manager. I was lucky enough, or I put myself in a position to be exposed to CERT as a trained the trainer. During my internship at Sebastian County, I was working on the EOPs and developing hazard mitigation plans, so I had the planning background. With the Red Cross, I was responding to fires and floods, so that was my duty officer at the time. So I tell you that because it's good to think about all the little things that you can do right now to put yourself in a position to get the job that you want in the future. And I just want to share a little bit about Arlington. If you aren't familiar, this is the downtown entertainment district of Arlington. Within a 3-mile radius, we have, can you see the mouse? AT&T Stadium. Of course, that's where the Cowboys play. We've got Globe Life Hall, where the Texas Rangers play, and Six Flags. Within this 3-mile radius, we have these 3 major entertainment venues, which can be a recipe for disaster. For example, in June of 2014, George Strait had his final farewell tour at AT&T Stadium. That brought in 100,000 people. At the same time, the Rangers had a game with an additional 30,000 people there. Six Flags had another 10,000 people there. That was 140,000 people added to the 400,000 population in Arlington in a densely populated area. And that is a recipe for disaster. For me, I'm thinking worst case scenario. If there was a bomb or a terrorist attack, first responders would have a difficult time getting to wherever because the streets would just be gridlocked. There's just so many people for something bad to occur. So we activated the EOC for that. Here's some other special events I've been a part of. World Series, NBA All-Star. We had the Super Bowl. The bottom 2 events, the Final Four and the College Football Championship, were ones I was involved planning for. And I'll tell you a short story about the Final Four. During the Final Four, we had the actual games in our stadium in Arlington. But in Dallas, they had a free music festival called the March Madness Music Festival. Our EOC was activated, and we get a notification that X amount pounds of black powder was missing from the pyrotechnics show from the concert. And of course, our hearts dropped. First thing you think about is worst case scenario. This black powder can be weaponized, and you think of something like a Boston bombing. So with our EOC receiving that information, we quickly disseminate that information, communicate to our partners, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, city, county, state. All the EOCs were activated for this major event because Arlington, we host the game. We activate the EOC for the game, but Dallas EOC is activated because they have the music festival. A-list celebrities were playing, and it was a 3-day festival. Fort Worth activated their EOC because that's where ESPN broadcasted all the Final Four events. So it was a truly regional event. DFW Airport also activated their EOC. So when we got that information that the black powder was stolen or missing, We communicated to our partners and we developed a game plan. We boosted security at all event sites. We had more plainclothes officers walking around. We did resource requests for more bomb dogs to come in via mutual aid. And it turned out nothing happened, thankfully, but we still don't know what happened to those pyrotechnics or the black powder.
Wondering about that.
Here's a quick photo of our EOC in Arlington. As you can see, here's the operations section. Up here are the signs of where the planning section, logistics, finance, what have you. Here's our video wall back here. Excuse me. Our video wall, you can see we can display the radar, local news channels, local news media, traffic cameras, and it gives us great situational awareness. Technology really benefited us. Here's a photo of the EOC when it's fully activated. This was for the Super Bowl. This was when Aaron Rodgers and the Packers won in Arlington. As you can see, it's filled with everybody with a stake in the Super Bowl game or the event. FBI, DHS, police, fire, hospital systems. The Red Cross was there, National Weather Service, utility companies, what have you. Here's our old EOC in Arlington. This was the kitchen. We had fold-out tables. As you can see, these vests here. We have the planning section. The green are the CERT volunteers. The red are operations. The white, incident commander. But this is our EOC. We didn't have the great video wall. We didn't have nice fancy chairs, but it still worked. We still conducted the same functions of an EOC.
Typically, where do you house your EOC at, like in the community?
Our EOC is in a secure location in the police department. So the police department is guarded 24 hours a day, so it's a secure location.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
I said, okay.
The bad thing about that is our EOC in Arlington was in downtown Arlington, right by those major entertainment venues. So if something bad were to happen, it'd be a cluster getting to basically where the most popular area in Arlington is. So we do have a backup EOC that is about 10 miles west and is not as densely populated.
That's a key point, you guys.
And I believe in New York City, the EOC was also at the World Trade Center. And that's one of the big lessons learned, that you need to have an EOC in a secure location, but not a densely populated area.
And if you do, like Arlington, you would want redundancy, like we talked about, with an alternate.
All right. I started my job at UC San Diego in April 2016. My major responsibilities are developing continuity plans for critical departments on campus, as I have listed. After I complete those plans, I develop and facilitate tabletop exercises. And one of the things that I'm doing right now is doing training for the logistics and finance section in the EOC. There was a campus-wide emergency. 7 staff members that hold the emergency purchasing cards. And with those cards, they have to know their role in the EOC. I'm training them on how to activate the cards, what common suppliers we use for resources for food, equipment, supplies, services, what have you. And I'm telling you, I've been at San Diego for a year and a half now, and it is extremely slow compared to Texas, where we had natural disasters, it seemed, every other month. But San Diego, it's 70 and sunny, so it's pretty difficult to obtain buy-in from people that, hey, we really need to prepare. One of the big reasons why I got this job was, of course, my continuity planning experience, but also I told the panel during my interview process that I would go out and meet with the departments and tell them why they need a coup plan. I was essentially being a salesman. I was selling myself. I was selling why continuity planning was important. Other interviewees, I was told, they said that they would provide guidance to those critical departments and let them develop their own continuity plan. That's the easier way. It's less time consuming, but if you tell a police chief to write a continuity plan, give him the tools to do so, he won't put enough effort and time into it because it's just another project. They're way too busy. So with my the word I'm looking for, I'm performing business continuity. I'm meeting with those department heads, those department leaders, and I am taking time out of my day to extract all the information, interview them, and develop the plan for them.
David, I want that to sink in for a minute because you guys, I've seen it done both ways. And that is definitely the way to do it. And when David mentioned working with the center, one of his classmates or colleagues in there would tell me when trying to extract that information from people, which you do have to do because they don't necessarily realize what they know sometimes. It's just common to them. And Steve worked with David and he said if someone had to get their phone out to look up a phone number, right there you knew that was a key contact because that person was in their phone. And so that was a clever way to extract something. So selling himself and letting the muckety mucks know, hey, I'm going to go out there and sell this continuity deal to people. That is huge. And he hadn't shared that with me before, but that is truly what can make all the difference when you're interviewing against a lot of people, and he was. So.
Yes, ma'am. And to make departments, when I meet with these critical departments, to make them understand the value of continuity planning, I explained that even though it's 70 degrees and sunny all year round here, UC San Diego is still vulnerable to a variety of things. And the first thing I did when I got my job was created a video, which I'll share now. Ms. Gray, do you want me to just try it on here to see how it works?
What do you think?
I think we should just.
Here, I'll just pull it up because we know it works that way. All right.
Okay. It's a short, a minute, 30-second video.
Okay, so minimize. Sorry, I'm having coughing fits. It's so good.
UC San Diego is vulnerable to many natural disasters like wildfires, floods, and earthquakes. We also face human-caused threats, such as workplace violence, civil disturbances, and terrorism. Think about the technological hazards we also face, like hazardous material spills, power failures, and cyber attacks. With a diverse list of threats to campus operations, how can your department minimize the impact of these hazards? By creating a business continuity plan. The plan details how essential functions of a department will be continued during or in the immediate aftermath of an event that disrupts operations. It documents IT needs, outside vendors, interdepartmental dependencies, and other resources needed to ensure a timely and orderly recovery. Business continuity planning prepares UC San Diego to continue its mission of teaching, research, and public service through any disruptive event. Help protect the campus mission by developing a business continuity plan today. Are you ready?
All right. So that quickly summarizes incidents that have happened in the past 5 years to make them think, hey, bad things do happen here on campus. And it was kind of scary how easy it was for me to find examples when I just did a simple Google search.
So did you create that as a result of your meetings or for the meetings?
For the meetings. So when I first got the job, I wanted to brand business continuity. And I went to our marketing unit, and they stole clips from the main communications office. So everything you saw was just clips that we got for free of the campus.
Awesome.
I just Googled news articles and did a print screen, basically. So this was developed on a MacBook for free. It took one day to create, basically.
So did y'all hear that? I mean, I know I'm being obnoxious, David, but you are doing it, and you haven't even been in the field that long. And this guy, he's a rock star in emergency management and continuity. So a lot of it's creativity. You rarely have the funds you need. Everyone says, oh, we can't afford that. So you figure out ways to make it happen. You got to think creatively.
And because that was one of the first things I did, when we met for the University of California, we have 10 campuses. So there's UC San Diego, UCLA, UC San Francisco. To get myself involved and to get other continuity planners and emergency managers from those different campuses to know me, I presented at our first get-together of how I created this video. And everybody was interested because, one, it was free, it was simple. Every communications office has clips around campus. And you can Google incidents that have occurred in the past. So it was a great way for me to just share myself and market myself as the new continuity planner.
Was the video taken seriously when you presented it to the departments, or like did it change anything?
Yes, I think it created buy-in because a lot of those department heads that I meet with, they've been here for 20, 30 years. And a lot of those incidents do ring a bell with them. And I think it just shows that things do happen here.
And how did you select the length?
I'm sorry?
How did you just, it's very brief. Was that intentional?
Yes, I just wanted something quick that when I have my introductory meetings to explain to departments what continuity planning was, I just wanted to hit the main highlights of incidents. And I think a minute and a half is long enough.
Absolutely. So a lot of times I'll have students present within 3 minutes, do this and do it in 3 minutes. The reason is, and he's lived it, you are going to have very limited time with decision makers. And so that's why it's very important to be brief.
I just want to share or show off a little bit about working in San Diego.
Oh,
So my office, the campus, is right adjacent to the ocean back here. And we've got Torrey Pines Golf Course right outside the window, where I've seen President Obama golf, Justin Timberlake, all the staff members line up against this fence right here when they're walking by. And just
Star Trek.
the campus where we're located, it's also 5 minutes away from the beach. And there's a nude beach right there if you wish to partake in that kind of activity.
Oh my goodness. You're telling me you don't have a view of that.
No pictures of that.
Okay.
And here's our iconic library. The library is named after Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss's name was Theodore Seuss Geisel. So here's our Geisel library. He's a longtime resident of the area. But I'm very fortunate that I've had a great start to my career. If I could go back in time, there is some information that I wish I would have done or information I wish I would have known. So I am sharing this now as pro bono to the students. Number one advice, diversify your experience. When you're in an interview, when they ask you, do you have experience in XYZ? Even if you don't have experience in grant writing per se, you can say no, but I have experienced a little bit of this. So I'll explain. My first job offer when I graduated in 2013 was for a public health position, a public health planner. You would think with my background, I told you I was an intern, I did continuity plans, and I worked for the Red Cross. Why was I accepted as a public health planner? Well, I told them little small experiences that I got. So for CERT, I assisted in a flu clinic drive or a flu drive. The CERT program also taught me about disaster medical operations. I had my first aid and CPR certifications. In the emergency management program, I took the EM in a hospital and medical environment. And apparently that was enough to get me the job. So it's the small experiences and how you twist it. But the job was in El Paso, Texas, a town that bordered Juarez, Mexico. So I passed that up, and luckily I landed in Arlington. In Arlington, I told you how I got that experience. I was an intern at Sebastian County where I was writing plans. I had my continuity background. with the Center for Preparedness. With the Red Cross, I responded. I was the on-call duty officer. So I set myself up for success by exposing myself to a variety of jobs. Another piece of advice. Do multiple mock interviews with ATU's, I believe it's Norman Career Services.
Yes.
Because I interviewed out of state primarily, many were Skype and conference calls. I ensured I was in a private room with a landline, and I would have my cell phone out to record the entire interview. I wrote down common questions that were asked throughout all my interviews, and I studied myself, where I got flustered, how I didn't answer anything concisely, and I practiced and rehearsed interviews. So I think that's a very good thing to do. Record everything you can just to see how you truly are in an interview. And it's humbling to see how far I've become, or how far I've come interviewing. Another big thing is your resume. Make sure it showcases all your talents, your skills, your education. To even make it to an interview, your resume has to show that you're qualified. So make sure your resume is proofread. Once again, go to Career Services, have your EM professors look at it. Make sure you're not forgetting anything. When you're selected as an interviewee, just know that you're already qualified. The big thing that they're looking for is to see if you're a clear communicator. Can you explain your experiences, how it translates into being a good fit for the employer? You're someone they can get along with. Be professional, be personable. And during interviews, always have prepared questions. I've been part of the panel twice, and it's an awkward end to an interview when we're finished asking questions and we ask the interviewee, do you have any questions? And they say, no, not really. It just ends the interview very awkwardly. It shows disinterest, and it shows that you didn't really do research. And one of the things I always try to add or mention in an interview is the first thing I'm going to do if I get the job is read the hazard mitigation plan. It tells me what our vulnerabilities are for whatever region we're at. It tells me what we've done to lessen the impact of those vulnerabilities, and it shows what we're going to plan to do in the future. It's something to me that sounds pretty impressive. Another piece of advice, professionalize your social media pages. When I was part of the interview panel in Arlington, we all sat down in a conference room and pulled up Facebook on a projector screen.
Everyone does that.
Yes. You wouldn't imagine how many fraternity, sorority t-shirts we saw, a lot of alcohol and pictures, even chest tattoos. And hey, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But like it or not, it has a negative connotation. For example, here's a picture of what not to have on your Facebook as a profile picture. That is my Facebook picture. And
Are you serious?
So there's a backstory to this. I was living with another emergency management student, and I left for Christmas break. When I came back, she put up all these Justin Bieber, One Direction posters all over my room. That was Devin Newman, by the way.
Yes, of course I do. Awesome.
But imagine an interview panel Googling or Facebooking me, and this is my profile picture. How are we going to hire this kid and expect him to be professional around sworn officers of police and fire? So those are a lot of the things I did to set myself up. There's a lot more in hindsight that I would have done. Number one, communication and public speaking skills. I believe in high school and college, we're required to take one speech class. That's far from enough practice. I think emergency management jobs do a good job of putting you in group projects and presenting to your class. And as an emergency manager, you have to be a great communicator. You have to be that salesman. When you're an EM planner in a hospital, government, university, private sector, you're going to be meeting and developing plans from the higher ups, the decision makers, the mayors, the city council, department heads, the chancellors, the managers, the directors. You have to be a clear communicator and persuade them to take time out of their busy day to meet with you. And you train them on what their role is in emergency. So you have to be comfortable speaking. One of the big things I'm an advocate for is Toastmasters. Toastmasters is a voluntary club that you can join, and they meet weekly, for just 1 hour a week. And a typical meeting consists of 2 prepared speakers that speak for about 5 to 7 minutes. And there's 2 evaluators who evaluate those 2 speeches for 2 to 3 minutes. And then at the end of the meeting, we have time for speaking off the cuff for 1 minute. So if I were there in person, I would challenge some of you all. I would pose a question, have you stand up and speak for a minute. And because I'm in full screen, I can barely see the class, but I want to make it a little bit interactive. I'm going to pose some questions to some students, if y'all don't mind.
They're up for it.
All right. Well, the nearest one, red shirt. If you could stand up, say your name, and answer for a minute. Share with me your favorite Thanksgiving tradition.
First, introduce yourself.
My name is Ahmed. I'm from Saudi Arabia. And my Thanksgiving traditional, like as I used to it in the United States, like we just hang out with friends, we have some turkey to eat, we chill. And yeah, that's almost all I can say about Thanksgiving.
Can you hear him, David?
Little bit.
That was good. Speak up just a little so he can hear you.
Like as I said, Thanksgiving, as I used to it, it's how we gather friends and family, have fun together, spend the night, and yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
And in Toastmasters, when somebody goes and speaks, there's a person marking how many times you say and like and all those crutch words. All right. Red shirt behind him. Young lady. And you stand up, tell the class, who would you rather be a parent of, Kim Kardashian or Justin Bieber?
Okay, my name is Serena. I would rather be a parent to Kim Kardashian because Kim Kardashian has taken herself from someone who had a very negative connotation. She still has a negative connotation, but she's built herself into this businesswoman who can stand on her own and do her own thing, and now she's a mother to 3 kids. I think that would be something to be really proud of as a mother.
Very good. So Toastmasters just gets you thinking on your feet, gets you in front of a group and just practicing your public speaking skills. I'm a huge advocate of it. I did a quick search. I didn't see any Toastmasters class offered in the Russellville area. If not, you could always start your own program. I think I would contact the head of the communications or speech department at Arkansas Tech and see if they have any interest starting the club, because Toastmasters is a universal program. You go to most cities and they will have a program or a club. You can market it to student organizations, staff, students, professors. They could all join, because in any field that you're in, any stage of your career, being an effective communicator is so important.
And David, just so you know, I listen. You probably heard me tell you that he did Toastmasters, and I did look into it as well. And you're right. I think it's Fort Smith, and I know there's a couple in Little Rock. Mm-hmm. That's a great suggestion about starting
a chapter within the university.
Yes.
I quote you a lot because presenting is not a favorite thing for just about anyone, and that's what he told me in his first job. Is that he went and signed up with Toastmasters, and he also volunteered to do weekly presentations, right?
Yes. It became like a drug. I just kept on wanting to rehearse and practice this public speaking because I could tell I was getting better at it and I wanted to work on my little corny jokes. It was cool. I enjoy public speaking now. It's not something that I have huge anxiety over.
Take that from him because I know I'm background noise to y'all at this point, but it's that important in this.
Yes.
One of the things I was curious about when it comes to Toastmasters is when you speak in front of a crowd, after speaking so often, you get used to speaking to the same people. So in Toastmasters, how do you get people to speak to different people without getting used to it? Do you get different judges every time there's a new meeting? Or do you have the same judges but challenges get different? How does Toastmasters work?
It's a group of in my group, there's about 15 people. When I was in Arlington, about 12 people showed up a week. So you have different evaluators during those meetings. And it's a good variety because it is a voluntary club. So not everybody's going to make it every single week. So there's a variety of people that show up.
And Bailey, that's a really good question. As I understand it, and I'm not saying this firsthand, but also they make a point of shaking it up a little for you, right?
Yes.
I mean, when we were there, they know that's an issue, that you've got to be comfortable in any situation.
Yes. And when you go to a big city like Arlington or San Diego, there's multiple Toastmasters clubs that you can go to. And there's also regional districts, so it grows bigger and bigger. For more practice with public speaking, think outside the box. When I was a student, I went to Arkansas Department of Emergency Management's PIO class, Public Information Officer at ADAM. In that class, they actually record you and play back they recorded you as a news reporter, basically asking you questions as the incident commander. And they record you, they play it back in front of the entire class, and it's a great learning experience because you're there with command staff from police and fire, and it's surprising how well I did just being a student. And it really shows you how difficult public speaking is.
I've been thinking about taking that class. Are there any prerequisites you have to have?
I don't think so. I don't recall, but maybe I would imagine ICS or IS 100, 200, 700.
The NIMS that we're always pushing. NIMS, IS courses, it's 100, 200, 700, 800, and then 300 and 400 are in the classroom. So those, keep your eye out on the Success site or on Adam's site for when those are offered, because that can make or break in an interview if you have those or not.
Yes. One of the things I also did was volunteer as a t-ball and basketball coach for the local Boys and Girls Club. Being a coach, it puts you in front of a team, in front of an audience, and you speak to them. And you may think they're just little kids, but your parents are always there. They're always listening. So it does give you a leadership role and public speaking experience.
And I want to say, just so you guys know, David was really quiet as a student when he started, and I could see he was always studying situations, but this is not someone, if you're thinking in your head, oh yeah, he went and did all this because he's like outgoing or confident or whatever. He is, but he worked really, really hard at perfecting it, as you can hear. And that's what impressed me, and why I talk about it so much, is that you're going to have to speak. It won't be an option. It won't be optional. So go ahead and get really good at it. And David, the career services, I want them to know that you and I did not talk before this, because you've said a lot of things that I say.
Yeah.
But our career services now has something called the big interview. And it is where you interview and it records you, and then you can play it back, and they'll even critique you and stuff. So that's something that we didn't have. It's relatively new. So it kind of feeds into what you're recommending.
Yes. And I am naturally an introvert, and I do force myself to do this. And you force yourself to go to Toastmasters or be a coach. It's okay to fail it. Those are good times to fail. You don't want to fail when you're at your job and you have to present to department heads. That you don't want that to be the first time you're presenting and you're nervous and you're doing all the bad habits. You want to learn from those experiences beforehand. Another big thing is enhancing your writing skills. Emergency management, they put a big emphasis on technical writing when I was there. But as a student now, I would choose a comp class or a writing class as another elective. I would take as many as I could. During my interview process in Arlington, I had to read an after-action report and summarize it. And have a written summary in 15 minutes. That was also one of the reasons I got hired. My boss said I had a really good written summary. For another job, I was required to give a 5-minute presentation over COOP planning. So interviews aren't just Q&A. They're going above and beyond to see if you can actually present, if you can write, and if you're the whole package. One of the things I do now to enhance my writing skills is I volunteer to be a secretary officer role or a scribe at meetings. During Toastmasters meetings, I jot down notes and I summarize the meeting and email it out. At work, when I'm in team meetings and organizations, I choose to be the scribe, someone who will summarize the meeting, distribute it via email. It just works on your writing skills and also develops your listening skills. Truly getting involved in clubs and organizations. During undergrad and grad school, I was part of IME, CERT, Red Cross on campus. But honestly, I was simply a member. I did just enough to pad my resume. If I could go back now, I'd become an officer in one of those clubs. It gives you practice facilitating a meeting, makes you work on your public speaking, crafting professional emails. Like I said, you want to do this all before you go out to the real world, and practice makes perfect. You want it to be second nature and just not have anxiety when you have to lead a meeting. By show of hands, is anybody an officer in any of those groups? Excellent. Another piece of advice is to network. You hear this all the time. I'm naturally an introvert, so proactively making small talk, it's just not natural for me. I force myself to be personal to make those relationships because Emergency Management 101, it's all about who you know. In the event of a disaster, have you made those relationships prior with necessary partners to be able to call them at midnight and ask for assistance? One of the things I always did before meetings or conferences or trainings or exercises, I never arrived early because I hated the small talk. But one thing I made myself do was stay late. That way I saved it. That way after the meeting, I could ask other EMs what they thought of the class or the meeting or the training. And that was my way of networking. When I was a student or when I was fresh into my career, I always had canned questions to ask other EMs during breaks, during conferences. Ms. Gray talked about classes ICS 300, 400. When I took those classes, I was a student. Everybody else was a career emergency manager, police, or fire. I would always ask them, how'd you get started in your field? What's a piece of advice you would give me, a young EM grad? I was very calculated in my small talk because I am an introvert. But I took small steps to ensure that I was actively networking. And if you take an officer role in one of those clubs on campus, that will help build your network. Because EM is a very, very tight-knit community. When I was a student, the professors were saying, you're going to be working with your classmates. I honestly didn't believe them, but it is. I can't believe how many classmates I've ran into at conferences or how many I've reached out to because I knew they specialized in COOP planning or GIS. I've reached out to professors. Classmates have reached out to me for special event planning while I was in Arlington. And it's amazing how much I've stayed in contact with the classmates. And social media now, LinkedIn makes it so easy to keep tabs on what your classmates are up to. One of the things, you will always be a student of emergency management. Take those boring IS classes, the 100, 200, 700, 800, obtain your FEMA professional development series, go to the FEMA 300, 400 classes, the PIO classes. By the time I graduated with my master's in 2013, I already had my Arkansas Certified Emergency Manager certificate. If you don't know what that is, Google it later. It's the Arkansas version of IME's CEM, Certified Emergency Manager. To be the Arkansas Certified Emergency Manager, to get that certificate, you have to have the EM experience, 100 hours of training, 5 contributions to emergency management. And those contributions can be doing preparedness presentations, doing the flu clinics. I saw recently, I believe on Facebook, Red Cross on campus gave out hurricane kits. Is that correct?
Yes, and we actually have the president in here, Jason.
And that would be a contribution to emergency management. One of the things, write it down, Google Arkansas Certified Emergency Manager, and try to obtain that by the time you graduate. Because those certifications, they make the difference. It reflects who you are. Yes, ma'am?
Oh, I think someone coughed.
Yeah.
We all seem to have allergies. That's sort of.
But the professional development, all your certifications, it's crucial. It'll help you land that job. Do you want to make more money? Those certifications will help. Right now, I should have my CEM already, but I've been slacking. I'm working on some COOP certifications. The big one I'm working on now is the Certified Supply Chain Professional. In EM and business continuity, I think with the supply chain and my background, I think that translates to the private sector. So with the Home Depots, the Walmarts, the Targets, they want to continue their operations in the event of a disruption. And that's business continuity. But with every private sector, they always have the supply chain management. So get certifications that will lead you to your next job or your next move.
And mind you, David loved where his job in Arlington. I mean, who wouldn't? And his boss is a terrific guy. But even if you know what job you're going to have, pretty much, let's say you have one secured, and you're loving it, you just never know what's going to come your way or what might happen to that job or family or anything. So you always want to be developing yourself. And I like what you said, David, about you're always a student of emergency management. There's always more to learn. It's one reason we don't get bored in this field. And I love boredom, and I know probably you do too. So
I wanted to share a little bit about the politics in EM. I'm lucky that my supervisors really shield me from all the politics, the high-level politics, and limit my exposure to it. But I want to share my first experience when I was working for Arlington. My first disaster, I'm sorry. It started in August 2013, and in December 2013, it was the first time I was duty officer. You had to take 3 months to learn all the processes and procedures before you became the on-call person. So the week that I was duty officer, the National Weather Service predicted 0.4 inches of sleet and ice overnight. 0.4 inches, no biggie. Overnight, it turned out to be 4 inches of snow, sleet, ice, and it turned out to be a 4-day ice storm. Now, as a student, when we had a snow day, what were you doing? Drinking, playing video games with your friends? In Arlington, I was waking up at 4 a.m. I was talking to the dispatch to see reports of accidents on the road. I was talking to fire and police to see how bad the streets were, public works to see the highway conditions. I called the power companies to check for power outages in the city. And I compiled that report and I sent it to the mayor and councils so they could make a determination whether to close government offices. While I'm compiling this report, the power to my apartment goes out. So I'm thinking in my head, this is the first time I have responsibility being the on-call duty officer. I have to get this report out, and I have no internet. I'm freaking out. I walk outside. My car is parked outside and has 4 inches of ice on it. So there's no way that I can scrape that off in a timely manner. So I put on a jacket, and I start jogging to the nearest fire station. It was about half a mile away. I did a slow jog, and it was just piercing cold, 10 degrees. And I get to the fire station, and I'm new. I show my staff ID. Nobody knew me. I show my staff ID and I get in. They have obviously have backup generators at all the fire stations. And there I compile my report and I send it out. But that was just a lesson for me that you always have to have redundancy. And now I can tell my kids that I've walked in freezing snow and ice just to get to work. But for the political aspect, I had to write the after action review from this ice storm. So when I was drafting the AAR, I was saying the police department did this when they should have done this. Communications didn't do X, Y, Z. Public Works failed to do this. Excuse me.
How do you word that? Like if if you just say like so and so didn't do this, they should have done this, then doesn't that trigger some kind of bad blood?
Exactly. That was my first lesson in politics. So I sent the draft to my boss, and he got a good laugh. And he told me, listen, this AAR goes out to city council, to the public. The AAR is a public record, which means news companies can request it, have access to it. And in the document, I was just talking about how horrible we responded to the incident as a city. So my boss told me I learned my lesson on how to massage words very carefully. You talk about the strengths and then at the end say, but you could have done this. So it's how you massage your words.
Absolutely critical.
Very smart of you. Another thing that happened, I'm not going to talk in great detail about it, but for Arlington, when we open up our shelters, we do it at our city facilities, our rec centers, and our faith-based organizations. Our policy is that we background check every single person who comes in case, because we don't accept sex offenders. But we have American Red Cross shelter managers, and the Red Cross, they allow everyone to come in their shelters. So that was a political minefield that we had to navigate through. At UCSD, in the past recent months, there's been all those hurricanes, Harvey, Irma, Maria. We've had tons of wildfires break out here in California. And I was noticing all these outpourings of donations. And for me, I wanted to establish a centralized donation platform so in anticipation of our next disaster. So in my head, I was thinking, the next hurricane, the next terrorist attack, tornado, earthquake, what have you, I want to quickly distribute a website to our students and staff faculty to fundraise. My vision is to collectively gather funds as one organization and distribute a big check to the affected city. And I could see it turning into a competition where you could identify yourself when you donate as a student or staff, and you could see who could raise the most money, or departments versus departments competing to see who could raise the most money. With the UC system, we have 10 campuses, and I could see other campuses latching on, and we could have campus-to-campus competitions. And if we got this launched where we could donate money, have payroll deductions to donate money, text to donate, it'd be for a great cause, and we'd have great publicity as an organization. For me, great idea, right? Well, we have a donations department on campus called Advancement Services. They're responsible for seeking donations and managing donated funds that go back into the universities. So they reach out to all the alumni and they ask for donations so they can spend it back to the university. Advancement Services, they have all the mechanisms in place to make this donation platform happen, but they are absolutely against it. And they will shut down any attempt that I try if I try to go around them. Because if they have UCSD staff or students donating money, they want to make sure it's going to UCSD and not another entity or affected organization. And it's just disappointing on my part because I know we could do such a great thing for people in need, but it's just, we have barriers and that really, really sucks.
And that's huge, you guys. That's politics. Sometimes you've got it. You can work around, and sometimes, like David said, you try and try, and then there's just some things you have to pull the plug and circle back later or figure out a different route.
Yes. But right now, I think it's a great time to be an EM. Seems like there's a big event or a natural disaster occurring almost every other week. And it's kind of twisted because we want bad things to happen so we can get experience. And there's so many avenues to choose from. You can work in government, local, county, state, federal. You can specialize in COOP, GIS, weather, meteorology. You can be a responder, fire, police, law enforcement, military. There's the public health, hospital aspect, private sector, cybersecurity, supply chain. If I were a new graduate, I would look into becoming a FEMA reservist. With all the hurricanes, there's a need for public assistance and damage assessments. There's a lot of paperwork to be done. As a FEMA reservist, you're in the thick of things. You get that firsthand experience. You're traveling to those disaster sites and you're actually seeing the people you're helping out, which is some of the most gratifying experiences you'll ever experience. And FEMA, they get paid by the hour, which means you get paid lots of overtime hours if you choose to. But that is all I had to share. I just Googled a confused puppy for my last slide, but does anybody have any questions for me?
I love the picture.
When you graduated and you were looking for jobs, what did you find to be like the greatest challenge? Like, was it actually finding openings or was it more so being qualified?
It was definitely being qualified. There were a lot of entry-level positions that I applied for, and I got a lot of interviews, but I think the main challenge was the number of years experience. So for my Center for Preparedness and Recovery, I took 2 years as a graduate assistantship. It was only part-time work, but I basically said it was full-time. So I didn't really lie per se, but I said it was 2 years of experience.
It was worth at least 2 years, David.
Was it?
Yes.
Thank you for validating me.
I deserved it. So,
But with the entry-level jobs, it still asks for 2 years minimum experience. So I think the biggest challenge was getting that experience as a student, because you can do internships and everything, but it's hard to get real full-time work during that time.
and what some of our students are now doing is more than one internship.
Mm-hmm.
We've had students that have done 3 or 4 different internships and juggled certain ways. Again, it's being creative.
And that's perfect. Like I said, diversifying your experience. The more internships, the more exposure you get, the better the chance you have of getting that interview.
And did you catch what he said early on about how they would ask about a certain skill and he would say, well, I haven't done exactly that, but I did X, Y, and Z. A lot of times you're fitting your skill set into their need versus just because they call it a certain type of thing. Don't let that steer you away if you legitimately did something in that realm. It's very important to point that out. And it's
Exactly.
not, and that's not something you think of intuitively a lot of times, so that's why we suggest it so often.
Yes, you have to make yourself suitable for that job. You have to explain why your experiences are a perfect fit for that job.
We've had really good questions. Y'all have other questions for David?
I have one. So could you give an example of a great question to ask during the interview?
One of the things I always ask is, what is the first project I'll be working on? And then they'll tell me and I'll say, oh, that's great because I have experience in doing that, or I show how I'm capable of doing that project.
And you kind of shared this, David, but I want to emphasize this to them. Is it's frustrating when you're looking for that first job. So that's why I try not to sugarcoat it or anything. But I say this over and over again because it's true. Someone like David and some of you that just know you're right for this field, it's getting that first job. You get your foot in the door and you do all these creative things and you practice. And then the strong, and I'll use his name, Charlie Horton was one. And he got so frustrated, and I know David did, but I just kept pushing him because I knew once he got his foot in, people would be coming to him. And that is what happens. If you work hard, you've got the work ethic. Same with Bodonna. So, any other questions? Okay. If we think of some, David, we will follow up, and I really appreciate your time. I know it was hard working this in, and I just appreciate it very much.
Yes, ma'am. I should have put my email address on this final slide, but if you have any questions, my email is davidtran@ucsd.edu. Once again, David Tran, Tran, @ucsd.edu.
Well, thanks again for your time, David.
Thank you, everybody.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank
All right, bye.